Hi everybody. This is part 2 of Horizons Beyond, The Adventures of Eli and Lila. Enjoy! The passageway widens, revealing a natural cavern lit by the flickering light of hundreds of glowing fungi that cover the walls and ceiling. The light dances and sways, casting eerie shadows across the uneven floor, making it difficult to discern the shape of the objects that litter the cave. Eli and Lila cautiously make their way through the cavern, their eyes darting left and right, taking in the strange sight before them. In the center of the cavern, they spy a stone altar, covered in a layer of dust and cobwebs. Upon it sits an ancient tome, its leather binding worn and cracked with age. Lila's heart races as she approaches the altar, her hands trembling with anticipation. She carefully lifts the book from its resting place, feeling its weight in her hands. It could hold the key to saving Eli's father, or it could be nothing more than a collection of useless scrolls and parchments. Eli steps forward, his eyes fixed on the book in Lila's hands. "Can you read it?" he asks, his voice barely audible over the sound of the water. She nods, flipping through the pages quickly, her eyes darting from one passage to the next. After several tense moments, she looks up, her expression hopeful. "It's a guide to creating potions," she says, her voice filled with relief. "There's a recipe for one that could help your father." She turns to Eli, her eyes shining with determination. "We can do this, Eli. Together, we can save him." Eli nods, feeling a surge of hope course through him. "Let's get started, then," he says, taking the book from Lila and flipping through the pages until he finds the recipe she described. "We'll need some rare herbs and ingredients," he reads aloud, "but I think we can find them in the forest." They spend the rest of the night gathering the necessary items, carefully selecting only the freshest and most potent plants and fungi. As they work, the sky begins to lighten, and they realize that dawn is fast approaching. Under the cover of the trees in the forest, they take a moment to catch their breath. "All right," Lila says, "let's get started on the potion. We don't want to waste any time." She finds a secluded spot beneath the cover of the trees and sets up a small makeshift laboratory, carefully measuring out each ingredient and following the instructions in the book. Eli watches her intently, ready to assist in any way he can. As Lila mixes the various herbs and fungi together, the forest comes alive around them. Birds sing in the trees, the scent of wildflowers fills the air, and the sun dapples through the leaves, painting the ground in patterns of light and shadow. Despite the urgency of their task, they cannot help but appreciate the beauty of their surroundings. Eli kneels beside her, watching as she stirs the bubbling liquid in a large iron cauldron, which they had also found in the cave. "How do you know when it's done?" he asks, his voice hushed. "It should start to glow," Lila replies, "and the fumes will turn a deep shade of purple. That's when we'll know it's ready." She waits for several tense moments, her eyes fixed on the cauldron, before announcing, "Now." She quickly pours the potion into a smaller flask, sealing it with a cork stopper. Eli takes the flask from her hands, feeling a mixture of anticipation and fear coursing through him. They've followed the instructions to the letter, but there's no guarantee that this potion will actually work. Still, he cannot deny the hope that has been kindled within him, the hope that perhaps, just perhaps, they've found a way to save his father. Lila watches as Eli carefully uncorks the flask and takes a small sip of the potion. His face contorts in disgust, but he swallows it nonetheless. "It tastes horrible," he says, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand. "But I guess that's to be expected." They both stand, catching their breath from the ordeal. The sun is high in the sky now, bathing the forest in a warm, golden light. The birds sing, unaware of the importance of what they've just accomplished. "Do you think it'll work?" Lila asks, her voice barely audible above the sounds of the forest. Eli shrugs, trying to sound more confident than he feels. "We did everything right. We followed the instructions exactly. There's no reason to think it won't," he says, though he knows there are no guarantees in the world of alchemy. They begin their journey back home, their steps lighter despite the weight of the flask in Eli's hand. As they walk through the forest, they can't help but marvel at the beauty around them. Birds flit from branch to branch, their songs echoing through the trees. The air is filled with the scent of flowers and the rich, earthy smell of the forest floor. It's hard to believe that anything in this idyllic landscape could be dangerous, but Eli knows better. He keeps a careful eye on Lila as they walk, noticing the way she clutches the flask to her chest. Her face is flushed from the exertion of gathering the herbs and fungi, and her dark hair has come loose from its pins, falling around her shoulders in a tangle of curls. He can't help but feel protective of her. The sun dips lower in the sky, casting long shadows across their path. The forest begins to take on a more somber tone, the air growing cooler and crisper. They emerge from the trees onto a dirt path that leads back to the village. They pass by a small stream, the water gently burbling over smooth stones. A family of rabbits darts across the path, their white tails flashing in the fading light. Eli feels a weight settling in the pit of his stomach. They're so close to home now, but he can't shake the feeling that something terrible is about to happen. He glances over at Lila, who is deep in thought, her brow furrowed. She looks up at him, meeting his eyes, and gives him a reassuring smile. As they round the final bend in the path, they see their village come into view. The familiar red roofs of the houses peek out from among the trees, and the smoke from cooking fires curls lazily up into the sky. The scent of home-baked bread fills the air. But it's the figure standing at the center of the village green that draws their attention. Lila's mother, her dress aflutter in the breeze, stands there with tears streaming down her face. She holds out her arms to them, beckoning them forward. Eli's heart lurches in his chest as he realizes what this must mean. They hurry across the village green, their feet pounding against the packed earth. The villagers, who moments ago had been going about their daily routines, now stand silent and still, watching them approach. As they draw closer, Lila's mother's features come into focus, her cheeks are flushed, her eyes red and swollen from crying. Eli's heart feels like it's been torn from his chest as he takes in the expression on her face. He slows to a walk, not wanting to reach her any faster, as if somehow that could change the news she carries. Lila's hand finds his, squeezing tightly. Their steps echo through the silence, drawing the attention of the villagers. Some avert their gazes, unable to bear the sight of the grief etched on Lila's features. Others, more brave or perhaps simply more curious, watch with unblinking eyes. Finally, they reach Lila's mother, who folds them both into her embrace. Her shoulders shake with sobs, and Eli can feel the heave of her chest as she cries. He buries his face in her neck, inhaling the familiar scent of her perfume and the lavender soap she uses to wash her hair. It's a scent that has always reminded him of home, but now it's a comfort he doesn't know if he can live without. The villagers begin to disperse, melting back into their homes and workshops, leaving the three of them alone on the green. After a few moments, Lila's mother steps back, wiping the tears from her eyes. She takes Eli's hand in hers, her grip firm but gentle. "Your father passed away this afternoon," she says, her voice barely above a whisper. "The fever took him far too soon. He was so brave, fighting so hard to stay with us. But in the end, there was nothing more we could do." Eli feels as if he's been punched in the gut. He can't speak, can't breathe. He looks down at the ground, struggling to comprehend the magnitude of what she's saying. Lila clings to him, her small frame shaking with silent sobs. She presses her face into his neck, seeking comfort and reassurance that he's still there. The village green seems to shrink around them, as if the world has suddenly become a smaller, more claustrophobic place. The air is heavy with the weight of their loss, and Eli feels as if he's drowning in a sea of despair. He looks up at Lila's mother, her eyes red-rimmed and puffy, her face etched with grief. He wants to tell her that he'll be okay, but the words won't come. Instead, he leans into her embrace, burying his face in her shoulder. He feels her fingers tangle in his hair, her nails digging gently into his scalp as she holds him close. It's a pain he's never experienced before, this raw, unfiltered agony. He wonders if it will ever go away, if the ache in his chest will ever subside. Lila remains clutched to his side, her body pressed against his. He can feel her heart racing, her breath coming in ragged gasps as she struggles to control her emotions. He wishes there was something he could say to make it better, but the words catch in his throat. The village green is silent now, the villagers having retreated to their homes to grieve in private. Only the soft rustle of leaves and the distant calls of birds break the silence. The sun dips below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, but the beauty of the sunset is lost on them. Lila's mother leads them back to their small cottage, her steps slow and measured. As they enter, the familiar scent of Lila's childhood surrounds them, the lavender soap her mother used, the fresh-baked bread that always seemed to be on the table. It's a comforting scent, but it's tinged with sadness now. They sit together in the small living room, the only light coming from the fireplace and a single candle on the mantel. Eli can't bring himself to speak, so he just holds Lila close, feeling the rise and fall of her chest as she sobs silently against him. Her mother sits across from them, her face etched with grief, her eyes red-rimmed and puffy from crying. Time seems to stand still as they sit together, each lost in their own thoughts and emotions. The weight of loss presses down upon them, making it difficult to breathe, to move. Lila's mother rises slowly from her seat, her movements weighed down by grief. She crosses the room and begins to tidy up, picking up dishes and folding laundry as if it's an act of penance. Eli wonders if she's trying to distract herself from the pain, or if she simply doesn't know what else to do. He looks over at Lila, her small body curled up on the couch, her face buried in her hands. He wishes there was some way to ease her suffering, some magic words that could make it all better. But he knows there aren't. Eli's mind wanders back to his own childhood, remembering the long hours spent at the village green, practicing his swordplay and honing his archery skills under his father's watchful eye. He recalls the times when his father would tell him stories of his mother, of her beauty and strength, of the love they shared. It was clear that his father had never truly gotten over her loss, and yet he had still managed to raise him with love and care. 1 year later. Eli stands at the edge of the village green, his sword held aloft as he gazes up at the setting sun. The air is crisp and cool, a light breeze rustling the leaves of the trees that surround the green. He takes a deep breath, feeling the familiar weight of his sword in his hand, the soft leather of his bowstring against his fingers. He closes his eyes, relishing the sensation, the memories it brings back. He remembers the first time his father had taken him fishing on the boat. They'd spent hours sitting side by side, their lines trailing behind them as they drifted along the water. His father had taught him the art of patience, how to wait for the perfect moment to strike, how to trust his instincts. It was in those moments that he felt closest to his father, as if they were sharing some secret knowledge that no one else could understand. Eli's mind wanders to the stories his father had told him of pirates and their grand adventures, of treasure hunts and daring rescues. He had always imagined himself as one of them, sailing the seas in search of fortune and glory. But as he grew older, he began to realize that his father's stories were also about love and loss, about the bonds between people that could withstand even the fiercest storms, and most of all freedom of the open seas. As Eli continues to stand on the edge of the village green, lost in thought, he suddenly feels a strong presence behind him. Turning around, he sees Lila's mother standing there, her eyes filled with determination. She hands him a small, worn leather journal and says, "Your father left this for you. I think it's time you read it." The journal is covered in faded leather, its pages yellowed with age. He flips through the first few pages, noting the careful script of his father's handwriting. The first entry is dated the day before his mother's death, and as he reads, he can feel his father's voice speaking to him, sharing his thoughts and feelings in a way that he had never been able to do when they were together. Eli spends the rest of the evening curled up on his bed, lost in the world of his father's words. The journal takes him on a journey through the years, recounting his father's memories of his mother, their adventures together, and his struggles to raise Eli alone. There are also entries about his father's own dreams and desires, his love of the sea and the freedom it represented, and his hopes that one day Eli would find a life of his own making, unencumbered by the weight of the past. The next morning, Eli wakes early, his mind still swirling with the revelations from the night before. He finds himself drawn back to the village green, where he sits on a weathered wooden bench with the journal open on his lap. The sun is rising over the horizon, casting a warm glow across the green, and he can feel the energy of the village beginning to stir around him. As he reads, he begins to see his father in a new light, understanding the sacrifices he made and the strength he must have possessed. He also realizes that his father had always believed in him, even when he doubted himself, and that his love for Eli had been the guiding light that had sustained him through the darkest times. As he finishes the last entry, a gentle breeze rustles the pages of the journal, carrying with it the scent of the sea. Eli closes his eyes, breathing deeply, and feels a sense of peace wash over him. For the first time, he truly believes that he can honor his father's memory by living a life that is true to who he is, chasing after his own dreams, and finding love and happiness along the way. With renewed determination, he stands up, shoulders back, and takes a deep breath. The village green stretches out before him, inviting him to explore the world that lies beyond the familiar borders of his childhood home. He knows that the path ahead will not be easy, but he also knows that he is not alone. His father may be gone, but his spirit lives on, guiding him every step of the way. Eli begins to walk, the leather journal tucked safely beneath his arm, ready to face whatever challenges and adventures lie ahead. The village green fades into the distance behind him, replaced by a winding path that leads deeper into the countryside. As he walks, he can't help but feel his father's presence with him, guiding him forward with every step. The air is crisp and clear, filled with the sounds of birdsong and the distant hum of insects. The sun is high in the sky, casting long shadows across the grassy verge, and Eli feels a sense of freedom and possibility wash over him. He wonders where his journey will take him, what he will discover about himself and the world along the way. As he rounds a bend in the path, he comes across a small pond, its surface sparkling with reflected sunlight. A group of ducks waddle across the shore, quacking loudly, and Eli can't help but smile. He sits down on a nearby grassy knoll, opens the journal, and begins to write, pouring out his thoughts and feelings on the page as if they were a lifeline to sanity. Hours pass, and the sun begins to dip below the horizon, painting the sky in a symphony of reds and oranges. Eli looks up from his writing, blinks a few times, and realizes that he has no idea where he is. But he doesn't mind. He feels content, at peace with himself and the world for the first time in years. And he knows that, wherever he is, his father will be proud. Standing up, he brushes the grass from his trousers and continues down the path, his steps now lighter and more sure. The stars begin to twinkle in the darkening sky, and Eli feels as though he can see his future stretching out before him, full of possibilities and wonder. He has the journal, he has his father's love and guidance, and he has himself. And he knows that, together, they will navigate whatever challenges and adventures lie ahead. The path winds through a grove of ancient trees, their branches reaching up toward the heavens like grasping hands. The air here is cool and damp, and a carpet of moss covers the forest floor. Eli slows his pace, allowing himself to become attuned to the rhythms of nature around him. He listens to the rustle of leaves, the calls of nocturnal creatures, and the distant hoot of an owl. It's as if the forest is whispering secrets to him, secrets about life and love and the journey ahead. As he emerges from the trees, he finds himself on a rocky outcropping overlooking the sea. The waves crash against the jagged rocks below, their foam glowing in the moonlight. The salty tang of the ocean fills his nostrils, and he breathes deeply, feeling the weight of the world slip from his shoulders. He sits down on a nearby boulder, pulls out the journal again, and begins to write, his pen flying across the page as if guided by an invisible hand. The pen scratches against the paper for what feels like hours, and yet Eli finds himself unable to stop. The words pour forth, a torrent of emotion and thought and experience. He writes of his father, of his mother, of his childhood home and the people he left behind. He writes of his journey so far, of the fear and doubt that he's faced, and of the strength and resilience that he's discovered within himself. And he writes of the future, of the dreams and aspirations that now drive him forward, unyielding and sure. Eventually, the ink runs dry, and Eli closes the journal, his heart full and his mind clear. He looks out over the ocean, feeling the wind tug at his hair and the salt sting his eyes. He knows that his journey has only just begun, but for the first time in his life, he feels truly ready to face whatever lies ahead. With a deep breath, he stands up and turns back toward the shore. As he walks, he passes by a small boat, tethered to a weathered wooden post. Without hesitation, he unties the rope and climbs aboard, casting off the remaining lines with a confident flourish. The boat rocks gently in the swell, the oars creaking softly against their moorings. Eli sits down in the stern, taking in the familiar feel of the wood beneath his hands. He runs his fingers along the smooth surface of the oar, remembering the countless hours he spent rowing with his father as a boy. With a final glance back at the shore, he starts to push off from the rocky outcropping, but he hears someone shouting his name. He pauses. Turning back to the shore, he sees Lila running toward the small boat, waving her arms to draw his attention. He waits patiently until she reaches him, even though he can feel the power of the ocean beneath him. "You didn't think I would let you start this adventure on your own, did you?" Lila asks with a laugh when she reaches the boat. She has a small knapsack with her, and it is clear that she wants to join him. Eli just smiles and holds out his hand to help her aboard. The wind picks up, tugging at their clothes and musing their hair, but they don't mind. Lila settles herself in the boat, pulling her skirt over her knees. Eli sits back, hands gripping the oars, and lets the world slip away behind them. Ahead, the horizon beckons, a vast expanse of possibility and adventure. He can't help but smile, feeling the weight of his past fall away as he embraces the freedom of the open sea. His eyes are fixed on the stars, twinkling like distant fireflies, guiding him toward a future filled with wonder and discovery. And as he rows, he knows that wherever his journey takes him, his father will be with him, whispering words of encouragement and love in his ear. The ocean carries them onward, and Eli allows himself to be swept away by the tide of possibility. He has the journal, he has his father's love and guidance, and he has Lila. And he knows that, together, they will navigate the uncharted future that awaits them. Eli Marrow, a 10-year-old with dreams of adventure, stands atop the rugged coastline, compass in hand, gazing out at the vast ocean. Alongside his friend Lila, they share a bond of exploration and a yearning for the freedom of the seas. Together, they're poised to embark on a journey beyond the horizon. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it.